Creating a unique voice. I find it really interesting that we actually use the word voice to describe our particular way of playing a musical instrument, because there's such similarities between the way our voice develops, between our particular speaking style, our accent develops, and also how we develop as musicians on the guitar as well. Because if you think about it, you're the product of many different things. You're a product of your culture, of your background, of your education. You're a product of the physical structure, how you put together. You're a product of the influences as well, the people that you look up to, the people that you respect, and also of the people around you as well, your circle of friends, your peer group. All of these things are contributing to how vocally you're developing, and also how you're developing on a musical instrument as well, how you're developing on the guitar. So if you like, you're already creating a unique voice because you have a unique set of influences that are affecting you as a musician. Now, the question is, do you like how you're developing? Because you are changing, you can change these kinds of things, and you are changing and evolving right now. As your situation, as your environment changes, as your influences change, these affect you as a person. I mean, I remember when I was born in Sheffield in the north of England, and then I moved down south later on after university. And my accent changed as a result of me changing location. And this kind of thing is happening to you as a musician as well. As your environment changes, as your influences change, you'll change as a musician. And because this can happen accidentally, this can happen deliberately as well. And there's a couple of things that you can do to influence your development if you want to influence it. Now, the first thing I would recommend, and this was a piece of advice I got from a guitar teacher very early on, actually, is to think about the notes you're playing right from the start of picking the guitar up, right from the early days of learning the guitar. It's not enough to just play the notes. You should be thinking about how you're playing them. You should be thinking about vibrato. You should be thinking about dynamics. You should be thinking about how you're addressing the strings. Right from the start of learning to play the instrument, right from the start of learning a new piece of music, don't just learn the notes, don't just learn the phrases, but think about how musically you're going to address these notes, how musically you're going to address these phrases, and do it while it's still awkward. Do it while you're still learning the phrases, because you'll carry that forward with you, and that this approach to music will be a part of everything that you do, and the more you do it, the more it comes out of you, if you see what I mean. Because we're not sequencers, we don't want to sound like a sequencer. We play an instrument like the guitar because we want to inject part of our humanness, if you like, into our playing. So you need to be doing that all the time. And I found that a really useful piece of advice. The other thing I'd recommend you doing is to record yourself, to hear yourself back and just listen to what your playing is like. And this can be really tough, I know that. And so what I would recommend you do, or try to do, is to listen to yourself with kindness, or at least and objectively as well. It's no good to listen to yourself back and say, well, that was crap, because you're not learning from that. What you need to do, I mean, you can be somewhat critical of yourself, though even then I don't recommend you doing too much of that. I recommend focusing more on the positives than the negatives. But if you see the equivalent of a verbal tic or a habit that you always find that you're doing, then there's nothing wrong with taking note of that and thinking about, okay, well, that's what I do today. What would I do differently? What could I do differently instead of that? And how can I bring that into my playing? And then start to to train yourself to use some of these other ideas as well. You need to turn these into habits and to replace some of the old habits that you want to calm down a little bit. So I find that's really useful. The other thing to do is to listen to your playing, listen to phrases and sections that you like the sound of. Take notice of these things, because the more you notice this kinds of things, the more you'll do more of it and the more you'll develop in that direction. So that's really useful. And the third thing is to listen to anything unique. Occasionally, you know, a lot of the time when we're playing similar licks, similar ideas to stuff that we've played in the past. And that's normal, you know, we're creatures of habit. But occasionally we'll go in a direction that we've never explored before. And if you catch yourself doing that, if you catch yourself on your recording doing that, then you should give yourself a pat in the back. Even if it's just a seed of an idea, it gives you something that you can develop and that you can take in a unique direction. So that's a really useful thing to hear back, and that's a really powerful thing to get out of listening to your own recordings. All of this is really tough, actually. You kind of need to train yourself to be able to listen to yourself dispassionately or kindly. One thing that I'd recommend you doing, actually, is keeping some of these old recordings, even if you hate them at the time. Just keep them around and then listen to yourself. Listen to it again in 6 months. And you'll probably find that time period, that gap between you first recording it and you listening to it back in 6 months gives you a way of being more disassociated from the original recording. It gets you away from that original embarrassment of the recording, and you can start to hear it as though you were a different person or you're listening to a different person. And you'll probably find that you sound a lot better than you thought you did when you first did that recording. And I find that's really useful, because you can take that learning forward, and if you can start to realise this, then you can find you'll be able to listen to yourself, you'll be able to listen to the recordings you've done today with that mindset, and that's really useful. So having that ability to listen to yourself with kindness and pull positive ideas out of that recording, things that you can carry forward, is a really powerful way of allowing you to develop as a musician. So anyway, hopefully all of this has been useful for you. These are all things that I've done in the past that have really helped me develop as a guitarist, playing anything, and helps me take my playing forward. So I still do this kind of stuff. Anyway, we'll chat next time. Goodbye.